You wake up, and within 60 seconds it starts. The reach for the phone, the check, the quiet scan for a message, a sign, a signal that someone out there is thinking about you. And if the screen is empty, something in you sinks. Not dramatically, not like a catastrophe, just a small, familiar hollowing out, a dimming. And you carry that dimming into your day like a stone in your pocket, and you don't even notice you're doing it anymore. That right there, that reflex, that is the most costly mistake you will ever make in your relationships. Because you have confused being loved with being needed. You have built your capacity to feel okay on the presence, the attention, the approval of another person. And you call that love. It isn't. It's a leash you've tied around your own neck and handed the other end to someone who never agreed to hold it. Here is the truth nobody wants to say out loud. You cannot love someone freely until you no longer need them desperately. And almost nobody reaches that place. Most people never get there. They orbit each other like binary stars, locked in mutual gravitational need, calling it devotion, calling it passion, calling it fate. It's not fate. It's fear wearing a costume. Real love isn't something you feel. It's something you give freely. And you can only give it freely when you no longer need anyone to be whole. That is the idea. That is the whole thing. Everything else is technique. Everything else is decoration. If you cannot be alone and whole, you cannot be with someone and free. Period. Let's talk about what need actually does to love. Because most people think need is the proof of love. The ache when someone is gone. The jealousy. The anxiety when they don't text back. The fear of losing them. People point at all of that and say, see, I love them so much it hurts. But what they're actually describing is dependency. And dependency has a specific architecture. It means your internal state, your sense of safety, your feeling of self-worth, is being regulated by something outside of you, something you do not control. And other people are always outside your control. Epictetus understood this 2,000 years ago. He said, in effect, that attachment to anything outside your control is the architecture of suffering, not a cause of sadness, not an inconvenience. The architecture, the blueprint, the structural framework upon which your suffering is built. And what is more outside your control than another human being? Their moods, their attention, their attraction, their loyalty, their continued existence on this planet. Every one of those things can change in an instant, and you have zero say in any of them. Zero. And yet you hand over your peace of mind as if you'd handed someone a vase and said, please don't drop this. They will drop it. Not because they're cruel, because they're human, because life is unpredictable, because everything you love is on loan from nature, and nature recalls its loans without warning. So the question is not whether the people you love will change or leave or disappoint you. They will. The question is whether your sense of self survives it. Whether you remain whole when the thing you've leaned on is pulled away. Because here is what nobody tells you. If someone's absence can collapse you, you haven't been loving them. You've been using them as a scaffold for a self you haven't finished building. And that is the cruelest thing you can do to someone. Not because you mean to be cruel, but because you've made them responsible for your structural integrity. You've made them load-bearing. And no human being can bear that weight forever. They will crack, or they will leave, or worse, they will stay and slowly resent you for needing them so much that they can never rest. Think about your own relationships for a moment. The ones that mattered most. The ones that burned. How much of what you called love was actually fear of being alone? How much was the panic of someone whose identity would dissolve without the other person there to reflect it? Back. Be honest. Not to punish yourself, but because honesty is the doorway out. Because the pattern is costing you. It's costing you your freedom. It's costing you your dignity. It's costing you the ability to show up in a relationship as a complete person rather than a half person searching for your other half. You still don't feel whole. You still don't feel like you. And the reason is simple. You've outsourced your wholeness. Now, here is where most people get the Stoics wrong. They hear non-attachment, and they think it means coldness. They hear self-sufficiency, and they think it means isolation. They picture the philosopher on a mountaintop, alone, indifferent, untouched by human connection. That is not what the Stoics taught. Not even close. Seneca invested deeply in friendship. He believed life was too short for shallow connections. He believed you should give yourself fully to the people you care about. He believed in duty, in loyalty, in showing up. He would have found the modern idea of the detached, aloof Stoic ridiculous. The Stoics were not against love. They were against need. They were not against attachment in the sense of caring. They were against attachment in the sense of clinging. There is a difference. A massive, life-defining difference. Caring is an action. Clinging is a condition. Caring is what you do. Clinging is what you need done for you. You can care for someone completely and still remain free. You can love someone with your whole heart and still hold the outcome loosely. That is not a contradiction. That is the highest form of love there is. Let me say it another way. The Stoics did not teach you to stop loving things that can be taken from you. They taught you to love them while knowing they can be taken. Epictetus said, in his own words, love your spouse, your children, your friends fully. Engage deeply. Do not withdraw. Do not armor up. Do not become cold to protect yourself from loss. But remember, always remember, that what you love is on loan. It can be recalled at any moment. The wise person washes their body, tends their property, cares for loved ones, all while being inwardly prepared to lose everything. That is the practice. Full engagement without dependent attachment. Full presence without clenched fists. Think about what that actually looks like in daily life. It looks like holding your child and knowing, somewhere beneath the joy, that this child will grow and change and one day walk away from you. And holding them anyway, tightly, tenderly, with everything you have, but without pretending that the holding is permanent. It looks like loving your partner, giving them your attention, your care, your body, your devotion, and doing all of that while knowing they are not yours. They never were. They are their own person, on their own trajectory, and they could leave tomorrow. And you love them anyway, not despite that knowledge. Because of it. Because the fragility is what makes it sacred. Because the fact that it can end is precisely what makes every moment of it precious. That is not cold. That is the warmest thing in the world. The person who knows it can end and still shows up fully is the person who actually loves. The person who pretends it won't end and clings in terror is the person who is just managing their own anxiety. Which one are you? Here is the bridge nobody talks about. The bridge between solitude and love. Because you cannot jump from desperate need directly to free love. There is a gap, and that gap is the capacity for solitude. Carl Jung understood something about this. He saw that most people run from themselves into other people. They cannot bear the quiet. They cannot sit with their own interior. The moment they are alone, the noise starts. The doubts, the memories, the self-judgment, the ache of old wounds. And so they fill the silence with company, with distraction, with relationships built not on choice, but on escape. They are not choosing someone. They are fleeing something. And fleeing is not choosing. Here is the truth. You can only choose someone. Freely when their absence no longer threatens your identity. When being alone does not feel like a verdict. When your own company is enough. Not enough in the sense of settling. Enough in the sense of being complete. Being whole. Being a person who has done the work to know themselves, to sit with themselves, to not run from themselves. That is the prerequisite. Not a nice to have. Not a bonus. The prerequisite. Without it, every relationship you enter is a transaction. You are trading your presence for their validation. You are trading your attention for their reassurance. You are trading your devotion for their guarantee that they won't leave. And no one can give you that guarantee. So the deal is rigged from the start. You will always feel the insecurity underneath. You will always be performing. Always be monitoring. Always be scanning for signs that they're pulling away. Because they hold your identity in their hands, and you both know it. That is not love. That is a hostage situation with better lighting. So what do? How do you build the capacity for solitude? How do you reach the place where you can love without needing? Let me be concrete. Because this is where most people nod along and then change nothing. You start small. You sit alone. Not with your phone. Not with a podcast. Not with music. Alone. In silence. For 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 20. And you notice what rises. The restlessness. The urge to check something. The whisper that says this is pointless. Go do something productive. That whisper is the voice of avoidance. It is the part of you that has been running from itself for years. Do not obey it. Sit. Breathe. Let the discomfort move through you. It will not kill you. It only feels like it will. You start reducing your dependencies. Not dramatically. Not by becoming a monk. But by noticing where you've outsourced your emotional regulation. Do you need someone to tell you did a good job before you feel it yourself? Do you need a text back before you can relax? Do you need someone's approval before you trust your own judgment? Each of those is a thread, and you can cut them, one at a time, by giving yourself what you've been asking others to give you, by telling yourself you did well, by being your own reassurance, by becoming the person whose approval you actually need, your own. You practice holding things loosely. This is a daily discipline, not a one-time decision. You hold your morning loosely. The day will not go as planned. You hold your expectations loosely. People will not respond as you hope. You hold your plans loosely. Circumstances will change. And you hold the people you love loosely. Not with less care. With less grip. The image I want you to carry is this. Imagine holding a bird in your open palm. You can feel its warmth. You can feel its heartbeat. You are present with it completely. But your hand is open. The bird can leave at any time. And you know this. And you hold it anyway. That is what it means to love without needing. Open palm. Full attention. No clenched fist. Most people love with a closed fist. They grab. They grip. They hold on so tight the thing they love can barely breathe. And when it pulls away, naturally, they grip harder. And call it passion. And call it devotion. And wonder why everything they love feels suffocated. The fist is need. The open palm is love. Same bird. Same warmth. Different hand. And here is the paradox that the Stoics understood so deeply it becomes almost obvious once you see it. The looser you hold, the more freely people come to you. The less you need them, the more they want to be there. The more complete you are on your own, the more attractive your completeness becomes. Because nobody is drawn to a vacuum. Nobody is drawn to a gap that needs filling. People are drawn to warmth, to wholeness, to the person who is already full and says, come share this with me. Not, come be this for me. There is a world of difference in that preposition. Share with me, not be for me. The first is an invitation. The second is a demand. Seneca, believe that the people you spend time with shape your character. He said to choose companions whose virtue elevates you and to withdraw from those who drag you down. But notice what that requires. It requires that you already have a character, already have a self, already know what virtue means to you. You cannot choose companions who elevate your character if you have no character to elevate. You cannot recognize virtue in others if you haven't cultivated it in yourself. So the work begins at home, in your own interior, in the quiet of your own mind. That is where love starts. Not in the meeting, not in the first date, not in the spark, in the solitude. In the moment when you are alone and you do not reach for the phone. In the moment when you sit with your own discomfort and do not flee. In the moment when you look at your own life and say, this is enough. I am enough. Not because someone told you. Because you know it. Because you've tested it. Because you've been alone and survived it and found something on the other side that is not loneliness. It is self-possession. And self-possession is the ground from which free love grows. Now let me tell you what this looks like in practice. In the real, messy, daily practice of relationships. It looks like telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Seneca believed real friendship requires honesty. The kind of honesty that stings. The kind that makes someone uncomfortable. Because you care enough about them to risk the discomfort. You don't do that if you need them to like you. You can only do that if your sense of self doesn't depend on their approval. So the person who loves freely is the person who can say the hard thing, who can look at someone they care about and say, you're lying to yourself, or you're better than this. Or, I love you and I disagree with you. Without flinching, without softening it into nothing, without making it about their own anxiety. That is a form of love most people never experience. Because most people are too busy managing the relationship to actually be in it. They're too afraid of losing the person to risk telling them the truth. And so the friendship stays shallow. The relationship stays polite. The connection stays on the surface. And they call it harmony. It isn't harmony. It's avoidance dressed up as peace. Real friendship is between people who can be honest with each other. And honesty requires independence. You cannot be honest with someone whose opinion of you determines your worth. You will always calibrate, always adjust, always say the version of the truth that keeps them close. And the real truth, the one that could actually help them, dies in your throat. It looks like serving without expecting, caring without contracting, giving without keeping score. Most people give with an invisible ledger running in the background. I did this for you, so you should do this for me. I was there for you, so you should be there for me. I sacrificed, so you should sacrifice. And when the ledger gets too unbalanced, resentment builds. Quietly, then loudly. And the relationship corrodes from the inside. The Stoic approach is different. You give because giving is what you do, because it is who you are, not because you're building credit, not because you're investing in a return. You show up for someone because showing up is the action of a good person, and you are committed to being a good person regardless of what comes back. That is not naivety. That is strength. The strongest thing a person can do is give freely in a world that keeps score. It means you are not governed by reciprocity. You are governed by your own character. And your character is the one thing that is fully, completely, irrevocably yours. Nobody can take it. Nobody can change it. Nobody can diminish it without your consent. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He said, in his own way, that the opinions of others have no power over your character. Seek to be worthy of respect rather than to be praised. Notice the difference. Worthy of respect is internal. It is a standard you hold yourself to. Being praised is external. It is a judgment someone else makes. If you live for praise, you are a prisoner of other people's opinions. If you live to be worthy, you are free. The same applies to love. If you love to be loved back, you are a prisoner of the other person's feelings. If you love because that is who you are free. Do you see the pattern? Everything comes back to the same place. The same axis. The same hinge. Where is your center of gravity located? Inside you or outside you? If it's outside you, you are not free. And if you are not free, you cannot love. You can only need. And need is not love. Dependency is not devotion. Fear is not passion. Let me say that again, because it matters. Need is not love. Dependency is not devotion. Fear is not passion. And the moment you can feel the difference between those things in your own body, in your own gut, in the way your chest tightens or loosens when you think about the people in your life, that is the moment everything begins to change. Because you will start to notice. You will notice when you're reaching for someone out of love and when you're reaching for them out of panic. You will notice when you're giving freely and when you're giving to keep them close. You will notice when your presence is a gift and when it's a leash. And that noticing, that awareness, is the beginning of freedom. Not the end, the beginning. Because awareness is not enough. You have to act on it. You have to choose, over and over, to be the person who holds loosely. The person who loves fully and needs lightly. The person who is whole alone and generous in company. This is not a one-time revelation. It is a daily practice, a daily discipline. Some days you will fail. Some days the old patterns will roar back. The jealousy, the anxiety, the scanning, the grip. And on those days, you do not collapse. You do not decide you are incapable of change. You notice the grip. You feel the fist closing. And you open your hand. Again, and again, and again, as many times as it takes. Because that is what discipline is. Not perfection, not a clean record. The willingness to return to the open hand every single time you notice it closing. Let me bring you back to the beginning. To that moment when you wake up and reach for the phone. Imagine a different version of that morning. You wake up. The phone is on the nightstand. You don't reach for it. Not because you're punishing yourself. Not because you've decided to be cold. But because you don't need to check. Because your sense of being okay does not depend on what's on that screen. You lie still for a moment. You feel your own breathing. You feel the weight of your own body on the bed. You feel the quiet. And it is enough. Not settling. Not settling for less. Enough in the way that a full cup is enough. You are already full. And from that fullness, you pick up the phone. Not to check if someone needs you. To see if there's someone you can be present for. Not to find out if you matter. Because you already know you matter. You are already whole. And that wholeness, that quiet, unshakable completeness, is not something anyone gave you. It is not something anyone can take away. It is something you built, brick by brick, in the silence, in the solitude, in the moments you chose to sit with yourself instead of running, in the moments you chose to hold loosely instead of gripping, in the moments you chose to be your own companion instead of searching for one. That is the synthesis, the whole teaching in one breath. Invest fully in the action of loving. Hold the outcome loosely. Serve without expecting. Care without contracting. Give without keeping score. Love the people in your life with everything you have. And let them be free. And let yourself be free. Because that is the only love worth having. The love between two people who are already whole. Two open palms. Two full cups. Two people who chose each other not out of hunger, but out of abundance. Not because they needed to be completed, because they wanted to. Share what was already complete. That is love without needing. That is the highest thing a human being can do. To love fully. To hold loosely. To be whole alone. To be generous together. Real love isn't something you feel. It's something you give freely. And you can only give it freely when you no longer need anyone to be whole. Stay whole.